concealed carry firearms in Virginia, in Fairfax County, and yet the murder rate in Fairfax County on any given year is the same as or lower than England, which is often held up as the gold standard for how well gun control works. We have a murder rate in Fairfax County that in many countries of the world they would love to be able to hold up as their own.
Well, Jan Ness tweets in, is Larry packing right now? Carry a gun always? If not, why not?
Never stood a chance.
We're in the District of Columbia, and in the District of Columbia, last I heard there are some 50 people that have a concealed carry permit. They've made it almost impossible. No surprise that the crime rate in the district is much higher than it is in Northern Virginia, where people like me can easily get a concealed carry permit and carry.
Next call is Richard in Gaithersburg, Maryland on our Democrats line. Gaithersburg is in the Washington suburbs.
Yes, good morning. I appreciate you taking my call. I have two questions and a comment that I'd like to make to your guest there, and I'll do them all at one time so they can respond to them. The question one is, where do you stand on smart guns? And my next question is, what about requiring gun owners, just like car owners, to purchase insurance? That's my two questions. Now, my comment is this. Just as we as a society accept automobile accidents because people drive, and no matter how many accidents we have, people are going to continue to drive. Larry, isn't it true that you and people who support your position have made the decision that the price for you guys to have your guns is all these mass killings, and that no matter how many mass killings we have, as far as you guys are concerned, that's just the price that we as a society pay for your privilege to carry guns? Now, I'm not saying that you don't care about the people who got killed. I do believe that you care, and I'm not saying that you want this to happen. Just like nobody wants automobile accidents to happen, but many of us just accept that that's just the price for driving. And that's my comment.
Thank you, Richard. Larry Pratt.
Well, let's start with the latter point. If we're going to be arguing that people are willing to accept steep prices as a result of their position, I would like to ask, are you willing to accept the continued slaughter in gun-free zones as the price of imposing gun-free zones, knowing that for some 60 years, that's where virtually all of our mass murders have occurred? Or are you willing to work to get rid of gun-free zones so that dirtbags have a warning that it's not going to be shooting fish in a barrel anymore in such places? The technology for smart guns is a long way from being where anybody is willing to put their life in the hands of a gun that is so-called smart gun. Many police agencies have opposed it. They certainly don't want it for themselves. You're in a world of hurt if the battery goes out and the gun won't function. Then it becomes exceedingly dumb all of a sudden, and it could be at a very, very dangerous point. The smart gun also, if there are two police officers in an engagement and one finds it necessary to use the other's gun, he wouldn't be able to with this kind of technology. So there are a lot of very steep obstacles that would have to be overcome before even police agencies, and certainly we could also add the general public, would be willing to accept something as dangerous, as risky, as smart guns. Insurance for gun owners, a lot of people have liability insurance already, and that's not really much of an issue even in legislatures where guns are not very popular. For one thing, if you imposed a kind of insurance on a constitutional right, you're really heading into very dangerous territory that becomes in effect a tax, and you're taxing a right, and that's the power to destroy the exercise of that right. So we're not in favor of that. If somebody uses a gun and they harm someone else, even in a non-criminal fashion, they should be held liable, and we have laws on the books right now that will hold anybody liable for something like that. It's the same as if I have something around my house that leads to somebody being harmed. I can be sued and will be liable for damages. Same with firearms. So we don't need legislation there, which frankly at the hands of the likes of Senator Schumer of New York or former Senator Kennedy, Massachusetts, would be simply a tool to go after the free exercise of the Second Amendment right that shall not be infringed. The idea that guns are the factor in the mass killings, I think maybe you came in late, but I've pointed already to the fact that we know that all of the mass killings in our country, save two, since 1950, have occurred in gun-free zones, where the law prohibited the average citizen from carrying a gun in that area. That's where dirtbags choose to commit their crimes. And I can certainly point to at least one case just 2-3 years ago in Oregon, in Clackamas, when a dirtbag was in a mall. It was posted, no guns. He had a gun anyway. He pulled his gun, killed somebody. Happily, a concealed carry holder, who was not supposed to have his gun, I'll say that, but he did outside the mall. He was perfectly legal, carrying his concealed carry firearm. He saw what the dirtbag was doing. He ran toward the dirtbag. When the dirtbag saw him coming, he committed suicide and ended what almost certainly would have been a mass murder.
Larry Pratt, where did your viewpoint on guns come from?
My viewpoint on guns came from my time getting interested in politics way back in the 60s, looking at the Constitution, looking at the history of our country, and realizing that as much as anything, the war for independence had been sparked by the British embargo on the importation of ammunition, powder and ball. The British kind of ignited the hostilities, although there had been skirmishes before Lexington and Concord. The Battle at Lexington, which is kind of viewed as the iconic beginning of the American War for Independence, began as a way of intercepting British troops on their way to Concord to confiscate the magazine of muskets, ball, and powder, so which the municipality was holding for the militia, the ammunition, not the muskets. I misspoke. So from a long study of our history, it's pretty clear that the British tyrants wanted to disarm us. And as we began to realize that we couldn't continue living under a government 3,000 miles away that didn't give a rip about their American cousins, it was guns that enabled us to defend ourselves. Had we been like the poor Chinese, that iconic figure standing up there against the tank, well, he got run over. And the Chinese government that did that to him is still in power. When the British tried that in 18th century America, we sent them packing.
Larry Pratt is the author of a book called Armed People Victorious, and he edited the book called Safeguarding Liberty, the Constitution, and Militias. His latest book, On the Firing Line, Essays in the Defense of Liberty, was published in 2001. Alan in Bear, Delaware, gun owner, thanks for holding. You're on with Larry Pratt.
Hi, and thank you for taking my call, and please be patient. I want to try to make a little bit of an analogy. I used to work on computers, fixing, upgrading them, and brand new out of the box, what you put into them is what you get back. And I look at our young children now, and the amount of increasing violence year by year that I've seen since the 1970s, even if parents don't want their kids to see these shows, there's advertisements, there's commercials for what's coming up that night, people pulling out guns. The increasing violence that Hollywood is putting into these young kids' heads is just amazing to me. And what you put into these kids' heads is what you're going to get back. And can we do anything about this? Because I think a lot of that, and your guest, I'm sure realizes we used to have decency standards of things, and cable TV came along, and boy, that everything's out the window. We are feeding our kids so much gun violence every day.
Now, Alan, you called in on the gun owners line. Would you support any further restrictions on your gun ownership?
I really don't think so, because I have a lot of fun shooting what I have. If our country gets to the point, and I made my point about the other things, why are we putting all these ideas into these young kids' heads? They grow up, and look what we have now.
Thank you, sir.
Alan, I would point out that we're within sight of the Capitol here in the C-SPAN studio, and I don't know for a fact what schools had ranges in them years ago, but I would wager that in one direction or another, probably less than a mile from here, there's still standing a building, may not be used as a school now, but that was used as a school sometime in the past, and in the basement they had ranges where students could go and shoot. Members had grown up in New York City, and he told me that he and his classmates once a week would have junior ROTC at school, and he would get on the subway with his cased rifle and ride the subway to school, engage in target practice at the junior ROTC program, and then go back home with his rifle. So the rifle wasn't even kept lock and key at the school. And that's New York City. Obviously, I could tell you accounts that people have passed on from all over the country of that sort. Those, I think, were actually teaching moments. Kids, even if the kids weren't involved in shooting themselves, realized that guns were not something that were going to go off by themselves, and one had to run away from them as quickly as possible, but that their own classmates were trusted to handle them in a safe and intelligent fashion, and that's what was done. And we didn't have a problem with shootings in schools, even though on any given day of a week there might be lots and lots of guns and ammo in many, many schools, and still to this day there are schools in the hinterlands of our country where you could find that kind of activity going on. So I think we've actually given up what was a very powerful teaching tool, teaching not only responsible use of firearms, but teaching that firearms are no more alarming than automobiles. Actually, more people die because of the misuse of automobiles than firearms in our country. And that, I think, we're losing the opportunity to teach young people in schools because we've cut them off from any kind of contact with firearms, for the most part, in their schools. And I would very much like to see us turn back from where we are now and return to a time when we actually had a much better experience with children